Good morning to all. So in our last class, we discussed regarding the introduction for the post-colonialism. So today we had to focus on the poem, which is the Langston Hughes Mother to Son. So in this paper, I will be dealing with the six major chapters. So the first one is the Mother to Son poem by Langston Hughes. Second one is the Barn Burning by William Faulkner. And third one is that the This is a Photograph of Me by Margaret Atwood, which is also a poem. Then after that, The House of a Thousand Doors, which is the poem by Mina Alexander. And then we have a short story, which is The Killing Time. And finally, we have a play, which is The Harvest by Manjula Padmanabhan. So these are the chapters that we have to focus on under this paper. So basically, the first one is that The Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. So this poem is from the American literature, the section 1 in the textbook. So we had to focus on the author's details first. So who is the Langston Hughes? So James Mercer Langston Hughes, which is the full name of Langston Hughes, was an American poet, social activist, novelist, playwright, and columnist. He was one of the earliest innovators of then new literary art form, which is the jazz poetry, and Hughes is best known for his work during the Harlem Renaissance. So basically, Langston Hughes was an American poet, then social activist, novelist, playwright, and columnist. So secondly, he was one of the earliest innovators of the then new literary art form, which is the jazz poetry. Then also he is known for his work during the Harlem Renaissance. So now we had to focus on the author's details. So, Langston Hughes is the most important poet of the Harlem Renaissance, which is the new Negro Renaissance, and it is often called as the Dean of the African American writer. Then, the racial discrimination to which he was subjected from early childhood made him a poet of social issues faced by his race in America, and his writings primarily aim at creating the positive images of black life and identity, one of the objectives of the Harlem Renaissance. So his primary aim in the writing was to creating the positive images of black life and identity. Through the use of the simple and direct style of writing, he was able to win over the hearts of many a colored person who did not have a gift of words to express what they felt, and his writings in various genres, including the children's literature, made him the poet laureate of the Negro race. So this means that Langston Hughes was the poet laureate of the Negro race. Then, inspired by the encouragement of Rachel Lindsay, who declared to the world that he had discovered a new black poet in Hughes. And Hughes continues to inspire the public by a bold portrayal of his people from all walks of life, specifically those who belong to the lowest rung of the social ladder. And his first collection, which is the Weary Blues in 1926, contains his most famous poem, which is the Negro Speaks of Rivers, which he wrote while crossing the Mississippi River to meet his dying father. And his two-part autobiography, which is the Big Sea and I Wonder as I Wander, reflects the struggles of his race in America, where everything is based on the visibly invisible color line. So basically, here we had to focus on some important details of Langston Hughes. So the first one is that the Langston Hughes is the most important poet of the Harlem Renaissance, which is the new Negro Renaissance. Secondly, he is often called as the Dean of African American Writers. Then, the racial discrimination to which he was subjected from early childhood made him a poet of social issues faced by his race in America. Then we have the aim of his writing, in which at creating the positive images of black life and identity, which is also one of the important objectives of the Harlem Renaissance. Then we have his style of, so the use of simple and direct style of writing, then he was able to win over hearts of many a colored person who did not have a gift of words to express what they felt. And also his writing in various genres, including the children's literature, made him the poet laureate of the Negro race. So these are some important details that we had to keep in mind regarding the poet who is the Langston Hughes, who was an American poet, social activist, novelist, playwright, and columnist. Then regarding his first collection of poems, which is the Weary Blues in 1926, which contains his most famous poem. So the most famous poem by Langston Hughes is that The Negro Speaks of Rivers, and which he wrote while crossing the Mississippi River to meet his dying father. Then, regarding his autobiography, we have two important parts for this autobiography. So the first one is the Big C, and second one is that I wonder as I wander. And this reflects the struggles of his race in America, where everything is based on the visibly invisible color line. So these are the important details that we have to focus on while going through the author's details. Then Hughes was an active member of the NAACP, which strove to change the quality of the life of blacks in America. So the NAACP means the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. So Hughes was an active member of this organization, which strove to change the quality of the life of blacks in America. Profoundly inspired by jazz and blues, Hughes explained life as having the rhythm of jazz. And also, Hughes resembles Whitman in his belief in American dream. It is also interesting to note that later Afro-American writers severely criticized Hughes for his unreflecting belief in the American dream. Then James Persley argues that Hughes promoted the idea that the Negro's bed has been lined with injustice, but eventually the American dream will triumph. Some of his important works are the Fine Clothes for the Jews in 1927, then Montage of a Dream Deferred in 1951, Selected Poems of Langston Hughes in 1959, and Ask Your Mama 12 Moods for Jazz in 1961. He has also written a number of stories in which one finds the character symbol through whom Hughes talks about what it is to be a Negro in America. So here we have some important works by Langston Hughes, which includes the Fine Clothes for the Jews in 1927, then Montage of a Dream Deferred in 1951, then Selected Poems of Langston Hughes in 1959, and Ask Your Mama the 12 Moods for Jazz in 1961. Then regarding Langston Hughes' essay, which is The Negro Artist and the Racial Mountain in 1922, which appeared in Nation, throws light on his views and objectives. We younger Negro artists intend to express our individual dark-skinned selves without fear or shame. If white people are pleased, we are glad. If they are not, it doesn't matter. We know we are beautiful and ugly too. The tom-tom cries and tom-tom laugh. If colored people are pleased, we are glad. If they are not, their displeasure doesn't matter either. We build our temples for tomorrow, strong as we know how, and we stand on top of the mountain, free within ourselves. So these are the quotes from the essay, which is The Negro Artist and the Racial Mountain in 1922 by Langston Hughes. So this describes the feeling of Langston Hughes regarding this kind of racism. Now let's move on to textbook page number 14 onwards. So which is the poem by Langston Hughes, The Mother to Son. So James Mercer Langston Hughes was born in Missouri in 1902 to parents who had decided to get separated, and his father settled as a lawyer in Mexico, whereas his mother moved to places where work was available. She conveyed her interest in arts to her son and put him in a white school instead of the usual practice of black people admitting their children to schools for the blacks. When she went in search of work, she entrusted the child with his grandmother in Kansas. Listening to the grandmother's story, Hughes grew up with a sense of concern for the black people and their quest for freedom. And he traveled far and wide and met many African writers of renown. Living in Harlem, Manhattan, he took up many different jobs to support himself and his mother, and along with it, he pursued the poet career and penned the agonies and tribulations of the fellow African Americans. Collection of poems, The Very Blues in 1926, conveys the musical life of Harlem and the turbulent life of the blacks. So here we have the family background of Langston Hughes, in which Hughes was born in Missouri in 1902 to parents who had decided to get separated. And regarding his father, he was settled as a lawyer in Mexico, whereas his mother moved to places where work was available. And regarding the interest of this mother, she conveyed her interest in arts to her son and put him in a white school instead of a usual practice of black people admitting their children to schools for the blacks. So Langston Hughes was studying in a white school, which means that instead of the usual practice of these black people admitting their children to the school for the blacks. Then regarding his grandmother, who is Kansas, listening to grandmother's story, Hughes grew up with the sense of concern for the black people and their quest for freedom. So basically his intention in his writing was to get freedom, the quest for freedom, which means that the search for freedom. Then he traveled far and wide and met many African writers of renown, and living in Harlem, he took up many different jobs to support himself and his mother. And along with it, he pursued the poet career and penned the agonies and the tribulations of the fellow African Americans. So African Americansനെ പറ്റിയിട്ടുള്ള കുറേ അവരുടെ പ്രശ്നങ്ങളെ പറ്റിയിട്ടുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങളാണ് കൂടുതലായിട്ടും Langston Hughes's poetry നമുക്ക് കാണാൻ സാധിക്കുന്നത്. So regarding the collection of poems by Langston Hughes, the most important one is the Weary Blues, which was published in 1926, which conveys the musical life of Harlem and the turbulent life of the blacks. So here we had to focus on two important factors regarding Langston Hughes. The first one is the Harlem Renaissance. Second one is the jazz poetry. So these two are very related to the Langston Hughes life. Then Langston Hughes wrote in the same passionate language of the jazz music he heard in the Harlem nightclubs. So this signifies that how he is connected to the jazz poetry. So he wrote the passionate language of the jazz music he heard from the Harlem nightclubs. So that's why he is related to the concept of this jazz poetry as well as this Harlem Renaissance. Then regarding this poem, The Mother to Son, it expresses the disparity between the dreams and reality for the African Americans. And also he wrote this poem when he was just 21 years old. So basically regarding this poem expresses the disparity between the dreams and reality for the African Americans. So this is very important regarding the intention of this poem, in which it expresses the disparity between the dreams and reality. Two important factors. The first one is the dreams and second one is the reality. So സ്വപ്നവും യാഥാർത്ഥ്യവും തമ്മിലുള്ള ഒരു പൊരുത്തപ്പെടലാണ് ശരിക്കും ഈ ഒരു പോയത്തിൽ നമുക്ക് കാണാൻ സാധിക്കുന്നത്. So basically this is for the African Americans, and also he wrote this poem when he was just 21 years old, and it is written in free verse in the diction of conversation. So basically the form of this poem is in the free verse and also in the form of this conversation. Basically this is the kind of conversation between a mother and a child. The mother tells her son that her life has not been a smooth one and describes the challenges in her life using the metaphor of a staircase. So this is the one of the most important factor regarding this chapter, in which the use of this metaphor, which is the extended metaphor, which is the staircase. So staircase is one of the most important aspect regarding this poem, specifically the crystal staircase. So basically this means that the mother tells her son that her life has not been a smooth one and describes the challenges in her life using this metaphor of a staircase. So by using this metaphor of this staircase, the mother describes the challenges in her life, and also the mother tells her son that her life has not been a smooth one, and also they describes these challenges in her life. Adding some more details regarding this poem, The Mother to Son, also alternatively titled as The Crystal Stair, and which was first published in 1922 December issue of Crisis, which is the organ of the NAACP, which is the National Association for the Advancement of these Colored People. So this poem was first published in 1922 in the December issue of Crisis, and also this poem was alternatively titled as The Crystal Stair. And later it was included in the Weary Blues, which was published in 1926, which is the one of the most important poetic collection by Langston Hughes. And having the structure of a dramatic monologue, it uses the trope of advice, and the central metaphor of the poem is the stair, and the act that reflects the struggle of the black race is presented through the action of climbing the stairs. So this is very important regarding this poem, in which basically regarding the structure of this poem, which is in the form of a dramatic monologue. Secondly, it uses the trope of advice, ഒരു ഉപദേശം കൊടുക്കുന്ന a kind of advice to his son by the mother, and also the speaker of this poem is this mother itself, and also the central metaphor of the poem is the stair, and the act that reflects the struggle of the black race is presented through the action of climbing the stairs. So the central metaphor is the staircase itself, and also the act that reflects the struggle of the black race which is presented through the action of climbing the stairs. So ഓരോ ചവിട്ടുപടിയും കയറുമ്പോൾ ആ ഒരു ആക്ഷൻ എപ്പോഴും കാണിക്കുന്നത് ഇവിടെ the struggle of the black race. And it is also Langston Hughes' version of his understanding of the idea of black womanhood. Then, mother to son creates a counter narrative to the dominant discourse perpetrated by the whites that sees the black woman as a domineering, egotistical figure, a kind of spider woman. So, the domineering means trying to control other people without thinking about their feelings, and also regarding the egotistical, which means that it is a kind of self-centered. So basically, in this way, the whites consider the black woman. This stereotype is deeply ingrained in the minds of the white race, and Langston Hughes, through this poem, talks of the qualities of a black mother who exudes the warmth, care, love, and understanding. Contrary to the racist notion, the mother is presented as someone with enormous strength and unflagging vitality. The need to go on without fear and without despair, the mother in the poem is that, and much more not just to her son mentioned in the poem, but to the entire black race. So in this poem, the mother represents the mother from the entire black race in which to fight against this black race. Then the optimistic tone with which the poem concludes is indicative of the general mood of Hughes' poetry. സോ ഇവിടെ നമുക്കറിയാൻ പറ്റും ഈ പോയത്തിൻ്റെ ഒരു ടോൺ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഒരു പോസിറ്റീവ് ഫീലിംഗ് ആണ് എപ്പോഴും നൽകുന്നത്, നമുക്കൊരു ഒപ്റ്റിമിസ്റ്റിക് ആയ ഫീലിംഗ് ആണ് എപ്പോഴും തരുന്നത്. So this means that it is a indicative of the general mood of Langston Hughes poetry. Now let's focus on the topic, the form, meter and rhyme scheme of this poem. So regarding the form of this poem, Mother to Son is a dramatic monologue, and in a dramatic monologue, the poet takes on the voices of another person. And in Mother to Son, the poet speaks in the voice of a black mother. So here the speaker is the mother, who is a black mother. So the poet speaks in the voice of a black mother, and she describes the struggles and obstacles she has faced in a racist society. And she gives advice to her son about how to survive those obstacles. And dramatic monologues don't have any set formal requirements, and there is no meter or rhyme scheme that they are supposed to follow. That gives the author the freedom to capture the precise sound of the mother's voice. And also, more specifically, the poem consists of a single stanza of 20 lines, and it is written in free verse and uses the language drawn from the African American vernacular English and a dialect of English often used in a black communities. So the language used in this poem is the African American vernacular English, and also it is written in free verse, and it consists of a single stanza of 20 lines. And this poem isn't constrained by poetic traditions that were developed by the white cultures. Instead, it develops a way of writing that is attentive to the poetic richness of the mother's voice and recreates that voice with sensitivity and precision for the reader. So that's regarding the form of this poem. So we had to focus on some important details regarding the form of this poem. So the first one is that the speaker of this poem. So the speaker is the mother, and she describes the struggles and obstacles she has faced in a racist society. Then regarding the dramatic monologue. So the dramatic monologues don't have any set formal requirements, and there is no meter or rhyme scheme that they are supposed to follow. And also this poem is written in a free verse and uses the language of this African American vernacular English, and it consists of a single stanza of 20 lines. So that's regarding some important details regarding the form of this poem. Then we have the meter of this poem. And regarding the meter, the Mother to Son is written in free verse, so it doesn't have a set meter. Instead, the poem's rhythm is loose, and some of its lines are very short and some of its lines are much longer. So this allows the poem to stretch and contract following the rhythms of the speaker's voice. As a result, the poem feels conversational and intimate, like the reader is hearing someone really talking. Then the poem shifting rhythms thus capture the tone of the speaker's voice and help the reader get a sense of the obstacles and challenges that she has faced in a racist society. So that's regarding some important aspect regarding the meter. So basically this poem is written in a free verse, so it doesn't have a set meter. Then we have the rhyme scheme. So the mother to son is written in free verse, so it has no rhyme scheme also. And also the poem doesn't use any end rhyme. The poem thus has a conversational, direct feeling. So regarding the rhyme scheme of this poem, it is written in free verse, so it has no rhyme scheme, and also the poem doesn't use any end rhyme. And the poem thus has a conversational, direct feeling. So the structure of this poem is like a conversational or direct feeling like. After all, rhyme can often seem artificial and poetic in the sense that it's something that doesn't just happen in everyday's conversation. And poets have to work hard bending their language to get a poem to rhyme. Because mother to son doesn't use any rhyme and it feels true to the speaker's voice and it captures the way her voice really sounds without clocking it in the poetic language. So that's regarding the rhyme scheme. Then regarding the speaker of this poem, the speaker of the mother to son is a black woman and a mother, and she is talking directly to her son, giving him advice drawn from her own life about how to survive and thrive in a racist society. So that's regarding the speaker of this poem. So this poem was first published in 1922 in The Crisis, a magazine dedicated to promoting civil rights in the United States, and was later collected in Hughes' first book, which is The Very Blues, in 1926. Then the poem describes the difficulties that the black people face in a racist society, alluding to the many obstacles and dangers that racism throws in their way, obstacles and dangers that white people don't have to face. And finally, this poem also argues that the black people can overcome these difficulties through persistence, resilience, and mutual support. So that's regarding this poem, which is The Mother to Son by Langston Hughes, an introduction for this poem. So that's regarding a quick overview of this poem and the introduction for this poem. So today we discussed regarding the author's details, who is Langston Hughes, and also the introduction for this poem, which is The Mother to Son. So in the next class, we'll be focusing on this poem itself. So that's for today. Thank you. Happy learning.